All right, today we're diving into something that's, well, it's both fascinating and honestly a little unsettling. It's this idea called the atrophy of skill. And it's basically asking, what if our best, most helpful tools are secretly making us worse?
So, to kick things off, let me ask you a question. What on earth could an ancient, legendary sword have in common with this smartphone you're probably holding right now?
Well, it turns out they both tell the exact same story. And it's a powerful one. It's kind of like a cautionary tale about what happens when a really important skill disappears, maybe for good.
To really get this, we've got to go back in time. We're going to look at what you might call the ghosts of some amazing lost arts. And trust me, these aren't just cool historical facts. They're more like warnings.
We're going to zoom in on two absolute legends. First up, Damascus steel. We're talking about blades so sharp the stories say they could slice a piece of silk as it fell through the air. And then you've got Roman concrete, the stuff that built the Pantheon, which is still standing after almost 2,000 years, while, some of our modern concrete structures are already falling apart.
So the big question is, how did these amazing skills just poof, disappear? You might think it was some forgotten magic formula or a lost technique, but the real answer is actually way simpler. It all boiled down to one secret ingredient.
Okay, so with Damascus steel, for hundreds of years, everyone just assumed the blacksmiths forgot some super complicated forging method. But the real story, which we only figured out with modern science, is much more straightforward. Their special raw material, it just ran out.
See, the secret was literally invisible. It was these tiny, trace amounts of elements, vanadium and molybdenum. They were only found in the ore from this one single mine in India. The Smiths had perfected their technique to work with this exact material, but they had no idea why it worked. They didn't know about the secret ingredient. So when that mine ran out of ore in the 18th century, their skill, it just stopped working. Gone.
All right, now let's jump over to the Roman concrete. For a long time, scientists studying this stuff kept finding these weird little white chunks inside it. And for decades, they just wrote it off as a mistake, sloppy mixing practices. But it turns out those flaws were actually an ingenious self-healing mechanism. It's brilliant, really. So when tiny cracks would start to form in the concrete over time, they'd run into one of these brittle white chunks, which are called limeclasts. Water would then get into the crack, react with that pure lime, and create new crystals that would completely fill the gap. It would heal itself from the inside out. So what everyone thought was a messy mistake was actually the secret to its insane durability.
And this is where it all connects back to us. Think about it. The invisible secret ingredient for our brains, that's productive struggle. It's that feeling of mental effort when you're really trying to learn something. And that messy flaw that looks inefficient, well, that's just the learning process. And here's the kicker. Our modern technology, our apps, our AI, they are being designed specifically to get rid of both of those things.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit. We're moving from history to biology to see what's actually happening inside our skulls. You can think of it like your brain has its own built-in pair of pruning shears.
Your brain is incredibly, almost ruthlessly efficient. It has this process called synaptic pruning. What that means is it's constantly getting rid of the neural pathways, the connections, that you don't use very often. It's a lot like a gardener snipping off the weaker branches so the rest of the plant can grow stronger.
So that old saying, use it or lose it, it's not just a nice little motivational quote. It is a strict biological rule for how your brain works. A skill isn't some file you store away. It's a physical thing, a network of connections in your brain. And if you stop using it, your brain will literally tear it down. So, what happens when we're constantly outsourcing our thinking to our devices? Well, we're not just getting lazy. We are actively rewiring our brains to be dependent.
And hey, this isn't just a theory. There's real data on this. Take a look at a study on GPS. When people are actively trying to navigate for themselves, finding their own way, a key part of their brain is buzzing with activity. But what happens when they just mindlessly follow the GPS voice? That brain activity just flatlines. The brain pretty much checks out.
And the long-term effects are actually pretty serious. When you offload that work, you're not exercising your hippocampus. That's a super important part of your brain, not just for figuring out where you are, but also for creating long-term memories in general. So using GPS all the time is directly linked to a decline in your own natural sense of direction. Now, I know what you might be thinking. The big argument you always hear is that AI isn't going to replace us, it's going to augment us, right?
But is that promise of a perfect human-AI team-up really the full picture?
Let's just take a quick look at education. On one hand, you've got writing professors who will tell you the entire point of an assignment is the process, the struggle, the thinking it takes to build an argument. But then on the other hand, you have the university policies that are totally focused on the product. They're just saying, hey, as long as you cite the AI you used, you're fine. There's a huge disconnect there, right?
And the result of that disconnect is a really dangerous shift. We're moving away from teaching writing as a way of thinking. Instead, the skill is becoming prompt engineering. We're basically training people to be good managers of an AI's output, instead of training them to develop their own thoughts.
So yeah, the big promise is this cool idea of centaur intelligence, half human, half machine, working together. But the reality, for most of us, is something else. The business model behind most of this tech is the attention economy. It's not built to make you smarter or more skilled. It's built to keep you hooked and make you dependent.
Which brings us all the way back to where we started, back to Damascus steel. And it leaves us with a really powerful final thought. It feels like we're choosing to abandon the mind.
Because that productive struggle we talked about, that mental friction you feel when you're learning something new, that is our invisible, essential ingredient. It's the special element in our own mental ore. It's the stuff that real skills are made from. Think about it. The Damascus smiths lost their art because their special mine ran out. It was totally out of their control. But here's the really scary part. We're at risk of losing our skills, not because the mine is empty, but because we're actively choosing to walk away from it, all for the sake of convenience.
And so that leaves us with a really big final question we have to ask ourselves. This isn't just about protecting jobs from AI. This is much deeper. It's about how we protect our fundamental human abilities, things like deep focus, critical thinking, problem solving, from being optimized right out of existence before we even notice they're gone.